Greetings, comrades. Today I come to you with more than a question than an actual, well, diatribe about some various subjects. And there's a lot of debate going on in Britain now, including amongst the ruling circles, about whether or not Britain should stay in the EU. Basically, the kind of David Cameron, Nick Clegg, the ruling inner circle, want Britain to stay in as part of the European Union. There seems to be quite what's been described as a backbench rebellion. Basically, some Tory MPs saying that we should have a referendum to decide whether or not Britain should leave the EU. Now, obviously, from a communist perspective, an integrated socialist European Union, it appeals to me. But that's not what we have. We have an integrated capitalist European Union. I think basically the idea behind the European Union was to try and make, trade and whatnot flow more freely between the various European countries, to kind of knock down the borders so trading can carry on more easily. Now, the financial crisis obviously has chucked into the air whether or not this is a good idea, and it kind of reminds me of an analogy my old history teacher made when he was talking about how the First World War began. How I think Austria declared war on Serbia, so Russia joined in, so Germany joined in, so Britain and France joined in, etc., etc. And he basically said it was like men, mountain climbers, tied together, and then one falls off a cliff and he drags all the others off, and they all fall to their deaths. I apologise for this camera quality, actually, it's being even worse than usual. But anyway, so it's kind of a similar thing. One country fucked up, and it kind of, all the banks are all interconnected and the business interests are interconnected, and it spread across the whole of Europe and basically pulled. It's not just it's a few men tied together on a mountain falling off. We're all tied to it as well. We're all being dragged into this. In light of this, I'm really not sure what the correct Marxist perspective, I guess there isn't really a correct one, but what kind of line we should take on this. I haven't actually investigated all the different parties in my country's opinion on this, apart from I was reading the Morning Star, which is the paper of the Communist Party of Britain, and they were very pro us leaving the EU, and I believe members of my party, or the party I'm associated with, I'm not actually a member of any party, but I hang out with some people and help them sell newspapers every now and again. But that's the people who produce the Weekly Worker, and they denounced the No to EU campaign. I believe that was the CPB. I'm not entirely sure. You can. I'm sure you can Google this. I read it on Wikipedia, so it's probably not even true. But anyway, they denounced that particular campaign as being left-wing nationalist, and the Morning Star is pretty left-wing nationalist in many ways. It kind of leans that way. So, and to me, it's a little bit like the kind of the debate on the nationalities question, whether or not we support a nation's right to independence. Now, Lenin did and he didn't. Basically, he sort of supported national autonomy within the Soviet Union, which of course disintegrated extremely quickly due to the Civil War and the rise of Stalin, and then things kind of just became quite institutionalized. I don't know how. I guess they had a certain amount of autonomy. They had their own presidents and their own kind of Soviets and things like that. But now, while Lenin and Stalin, and I guess Trotsky as well, sort of supported this, people like Rosa Luxemburg said that the idea of supporting a nation's right to independence, you're basically just handing power to that particular nation's bourgeoisie over another's. And I can see both sides of the argument, and it seems counterproductive to promote any kind of nationalism. But that said, basically, in a way, I'm sympathetic to the idea of sort of independence from other nations, and a great deal of that is due to a book I read called "I Am a Chechen." I can't remember the guy who wrote it, but it's a really good book, and it's quite a touching book, and he doesn't make any kind of political diatribe about why Chechnya should be independent, but he kind of describes sort of the history of Chechnya, as well as his experiences growing up in the Soviet Union and in the war and stuff. It's quite an abstract book. There isn't any kind of formula line to it. But anyway, basically, it's called "I Am a Chechen." It's a really good book, and I read it, and it made me very sympathetic to the idea of national independence. But again, as I said, don't want to promote nationalism over internationalism. So, what benefits would, because I'm not 100% sure myself. This isn't something I've really thought too deeply about, as I didn't really expect this to become an issue within our kind of parliamentary politics here. So it's not something I've thought too much about. So this is a question. I'm looking for your opinions on whether or not Britain should leave the EU. Should we dissolve the EU? Should we keep it? I mean, there's the potential that you've got the European Parliament, which, in theory, you could fill with communists if you got everyone to vote communists, but seems unlikely anytime soon. Now, there's of course, as people who ideally want the end of capitalism, anything that would hasten the destruction of capitalism would be a good thing. And being a part of the EU when the shit hits the fan would hasten it. But that said, that's also inflicting, hardship upon our own workers, which we don't want either. So it's a tricky question. I don't really know where to stand. I'm not sure exactly what benefits it would bring. I mean, I can't see us breaking. Britain, I don't think is capable of being kind of an autarkic country. We can't support ourselves. We're dependent on trade. I mean, we could in theory, but that's not the way our economy's geared at this point. So obviously we wouldn't break off trade with Europe. I guess it'd be issues like immigration and the kind of the nature of the trade and kind of the EU regulations and things like that. So I'm not sure. I can see positive arguments on both sides. I mean, if we stayed in the EU, well, I guess there aren't that many positive arguments for staying in the EU, apart from that sort of economic defeatism, which, it seems a bit harsh. I have a stake in this. I mean, I found it very hard to find work over the last year. I managed to find work. I find it, I'm having difficulty with housing and stuff. A better economy would benefit me personally. So, and just from my own experience, it's not something I particularly wish on anybody else. So, for the economic defeatism, it doesn't sit well with me. It's not a good line. The being integrated with European politics and kind of a pan-Europeanism, well, that hasn't really worked. It wouldn't work in the same way that, like, for example, I did a video a few months ago on Pan-Arabism, and for all the reasons Pan-Arabism could potentially be a useful thing, Europe is so divided anyway by culture and language and to an extent religion. A pan-European ideology, except in kind of a proletarian internationalist sense, isn't going to take root anyway. So, for example, there's no kind of Frankfurt School approach to unifying Europe. I don't think it doesn't make any sense. And as we've seen, as soon as hard times hits, everyone hates the EU. Everyone's up in arms, but they're more scared of leaving it than joining it. And I need to think kind of more deeply on this. But what I would like to hear is your opinions. So I ask you two questions. What is your opinion on the nationalities question? Does a nation have a right to independence, or should we concentrate on internationalism and destroying kind of nationalism in favour of, international socialism, basically? Or do you support the idea of having national autonomy and cultural autonomy within kind of SSRs, that kind of format, or indeed even separate states? Now, I don't think the separate states really worked very well in Eastern Bloc, but maybe that was just because of Stalinism. I don't see it becoming any better under any other kind of model of socialism that advocates that sort of having separate socialist states. The second question is, should Britain leave the EU? Should we pull out? Would it be better from a socialist point of view? Would it be better from just a purely material, making it easier for people to get by point of view? Should we dissolve the EU altogether? Now, I do see the EU as, I think the Greek example, it's kind of like a sort of I saw it compared to kind of like a feudalism in Greece. Basically, the Greek government is essentially being held at gunpoint by the EU, and their government is completely iniquitous, submissive, subservient to the EU. And the people of Greece are very pissed off about this. Unfortunately, they seem to be turning to the left rather than to the far right. But as I explained in a previous video, that's kind of a very fragile unity. And then, I'm going to do other videos, but like I say, I want to gauge your opinion on this. EU, do we stay or do we go? So, because I'm not really sure. But yeah, thanks for watching. Red salutes, comrades. Please comment or do a video response, because I want to hear what you think. Alright.